Welcome to Never Too Late for Fitness Radio, bringing baby boomers proven strategies and innovative products for getting fit, staying fit, so you can live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Here's your host, best-selling author and fitness advocate, Phil Ferriss.
If you are a woman over 30 who have been on and off diets for most of your life, this show is for you. If your relationship with food is ruining your health and maybe your life, this show is for you. If you want to finally look and feel great without obsessing about the scale and what you eat, this show is for you. Brandy Schroeder, aka Coach B, is on a mission to help women feel confident in their skin and balance life's chaos through sustainable nutritional lifestyle changes. Brandy helps women understand that is often more than food when it comes to their weight and how they feel about themselves. Brandy is a retired bodybuilder turned Crossfitter who understands the extreme nature of dieting. She helps women understand what chronic dieting does to their overall health. Where does she go from there? She helps you understand the next action steps you need to take to get closer to your goals. Thank you, Brandy, for being on the show today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, great. Now, you tend to work with and attract a very specific kind of client. Can you talk about the issues they have and how you work with them?
Yeah. So, the age, it kind of varies, but I'm usually working with women between the ages of 30 to about 44, 45. And most women are coming to me that are in a constant state of repair. So what I mean by that is they've been chronically dieting. They've been jumping from one diet to the next, really not understanding what really is going on. They just assume that they need another diet or a quick fix where, I help them figure out the fact that it's often more than food itself, that there's more things there. There are habits, there are hormonal issues that they might be up against. Just their mindset, like they're just always looking for a quick fix. And for me, I just want to show them that there are better ways, there are better habits, and I want to show them a sustainable approach because, at the end of the day, we want to, the one thing that makes everything better is the fact that we adhere to the program and we are following things in a consistent manner. And I think the women that come to me, they just haven't even been able to find that. They're just all over the map and very frustrated and overwhelmed.
Okay. Now, I want to drill down on a couple of concepts that you talked about. And one is, you said that they're in a state of repair, which means their body is somewhat broken from all the diets. Can you talk about what that really means, what it means to be in a state of repair and how that happens and how it affects their body and their health?
For sure. So what I mean by that is that, I have, a female client that will come to me and she's done everything. She's tried every diet out there. And she's chronically restricting her intake. So she's always in a deficit or, and she's eating clean and thinks that she's healthy, right? Like she's making good choices, but then on the weekend, she's binging on food that she would normally tell herself that she can't have. So she's labeling food. So she's got this really poor relationship with food, but yet still trying to figure that out, right? And then, she's dieting and she's, trying keto and she's done, maybe even approached doing a bodybuilding show or is in CrossFit now and has these extreme natures of training, all these different things that are just building up where, no matter what she tries, it's just not working. She continues to gain weight or feel really tired and, even their hormonal profile isn't good. So exhaustion and, maybe the thyroid isn't firing and metabolism is just kind of all messed up. And for me, I like to talk to the client, figure out what, their history and understand it all, and then kind of reverse engineer what's all been going on. And, because when they come to me, they're usually looking for the next quick fix. Like they're just looking for that next, magic pill or whatever it is. And I'm here to tell them you know what, you are broken. And it starts with your mindset. It starts with understanding that chronic dieting isn't going to help you and that, maybe eating more food is important and exercising less so that you can, reestablish a better relationship with food, but also rebuild your body's metabolic capacity and rebuild your I don't know, like it's difficult to say, but rebuild that foundation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But let me add, a woman comes to you and she's looking for a quick fix, and you're not into the quick fix business. So how do they respond when you say, wait a minute, I'm not your next stop on the quick fix, carousel? How do they respond to that? How do you get them to switch from the quick fix mentality to a more sustainable approach?
Well, we often, like, I'll go through their journals. So I'll ask them to journal for, about a week or so. I'll, ask them a lot of questions. I want to understand their history. So if there's somebody that has come to me and all they do is diet, I kind of paint that picture of like what they've been doing, and have them understand that, like, you are a byproduct of the choices you've made to this day. Therefore, the choices you've been making they're not sustainable, for one, and they're the reason why you've reached out. It's the reason why you're not losing weight or feeling better. If you don't feel confident, we have to look at your lifestyle and your habits. And so when you start pointing that kind of stuff out and step away from just focusing, strictly on food, they start to understand, like, wow, like, maybe I do make poor choices, or I binge on the weekend because I restrict myself. Yet they've always been told that in order to lose weight, they have to be in this restriction. But it has so much to do with social media, external influences and stuff like that, and just the diet mentality. So when I start talking about diet mentality, which they don't really understand, but once I get through the definition of, like, you're chronically always wanting to seek that next quick fix or diet, I mean, I can't help you with that, because that is not what's helping you. That's what's breaking you. So we just kind of establish this kind of like communication and this trust. And I ask them to dig deep. And a lot of this comes from just me looking at their dietary intake by, journaling their food, or they can track their food in a tracker. So like macro tracking. I ask a lot of questions. And that's when we start to figure it out. Like, okay, so it is habits. It's, chronic dieting. There's so many things that I can start to pinpoint, and then I reverse engineer that. So basically, for some people, when they come to me and they're under eating, I might introduce the concept of reverse dieting, which is rebuilding their metabolic capacity, because they've been chronically underfeeding themselves so much that is one of the reasons why they do binge. Not for everybody. Obviously, there are true binge eating disorders that need to be diagnosed. But for the most part, this yo-yo effect of on and off diets has so much to do with the approach, poor relationships with themselves, and just food in general. And just, I use this term, and I don't know if people understand it, but it's kind of like the bro science. There's no evidence, right? So people just talk about it in social media, or it's what they've read in a magazine. Whereas I go from experience. I have tons of clients that have gone through this, including myself, where, you got to start digging deep. And I like to say to people, like, you got to figure your shit out. Like, there's more to it than food.
And now you talked about your personal experience and how because you were a competitive bodybuilder, and by a lot of examples, you were very, fit, but you weren't necessarily healthy because of the way you were approaching food and dieting. Maybe you could share your story and how from that you took the course you're on now to help other women get a healthier course and journey towards health and fitness.
For sure. So, bodybuilding diets or, chronically restricting your intake. So that's kind of what I was on the path for. So to get on stage, you have to be really, really super lean. And so I followed basic meal plans that were very, very restricted in both food variety and calories. And from that standpoint, that's where I kind of laid the foundation for a poor relationship with not only food, but my body, because I was a person who was kind of like, fit in the off season. But then when I started dieting for shows, of course, I'm looking really, really super, super lean. And you want to look that way all the time. But getting there means restrictions and chronic dieting, but also over-exercising. But, like for me, it was part of the regime. Like, in order to get on stage and to do things like photo shoots, you just have this plan. And so I followed it. And at one point, it was like really, really low calories, probably at a point of like 1,000 calories per day. And I was doing like weight training every single day, plus 2 hours of cardio every single day, to a point where, I was really exhausted. And I might have looked amazing because I did quite well in all my competitions. I competed 8 times in 4-year span. But because of that chronic dieting and just being in a deficit for so many years, like I was cold all the time. I really did have a poor relationship with food. I quickly understood that I was suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea. So basically, I lost my period for the entire 4-year process and continued to not have my period for another 3 years. So in total, 7 years of my life, I didn't have my period, which is very, very unhealthy. But I just kind of ignored those symptoms because I had this goal. I wanted to be on stage and I wanted to be in the best shape of what I thought was the best shape of my life. But I was irritable, tired, hungry. Just my pictures make me look amazing, but I was seriously not in a good place. And I like to say that when I look back, it was some of the darkest times because I just was truly so unhappy, but yet I was striving for this validation. And then once I realized that this was just no way, I can't do this anymore, it's when I started to enter into the idea of flexible dieting. So I had hired a few other coaches to help me kind of through it as well. But basically, I had to rebuild my relationship with food because I was that person who would restrict all week and then cheat on the weekend. So basically a cheat meal that turned into a glorified cheat weekend, which was just over consuming calories to a point where I just didn't feel well, right? And then I get right back on it, come, Monday morning. But I had that cycle for quite some time on and off throughout my entire adult life because of, I competed for the very first time in 1999, but then I went back to it in 2011. And that's where it kind of rekindled that poor relationship with all of it, right? And so at the end of the day, I wanted to reverse all that. And so I introduced the idea of reverse dieting, so slowly rebuilding my metabolic capacity because I knew I was unhealthy and I knew my hormones were messed up. And I retired from bodybuilding, but I wanted to enter into CrossFit, and in order to do that, you need to eat more food to perform. And yet I'm telling myself I need to stay lean, and it was just really, really conflicting. I had this diet mentality, and it was just always focused. I always thought about food and always focused on that. So once I got into the realm of flexible dieting, so basically eating everything in moderation and tracking my macros, so using MyFitnessPal to track that, I rebuilt my relationship with food because I slowly started to add in foods that I would always shame or tell myself that I couldn't have. Like things it was as small fill as bananas. Like I would be like, oh, I can't have a banana till Saturday because has sugar in it. That's what my coach told me or whatever, right? So just kind of a lot of misconceptions behind nutrition, even as a coach, because I got so messed up in just how I looked, and it's so difficult to get out of that. We have this vision. So I used a lot of that, and I applied the reverse dieting, which is slowly adding food back in so that I can increase my metabolic systems so that I could, basically help not only heal my relationship with food, and just clear my mindset, but I had to focus on hormones. Like having your period is important for a female. It's a healthy thing. And I wasn't sure if I was going into perimenopause, and like I'm at the age of, I was at the age of 40, and like, what is going on? So it was really not a great place, but it's what I did, and it's why I help people now, because there is a better way. And I know that women who chronically underfeed themselves don't understand the damage that they could be doing to their bodies, even though they're trying to look a certain way, because it has impact later in life. And I think that if we could just rebuild that relationship with food, drop the diet mentality, and just understand that food is good. We just got to understand how much we need to fuel our bodies. And that, if we could just eliminate things like binges and I guess like labeling food good or bad, we might be in a better place, or I know we will be in a better place.
Okay, so let me see if I grasp some of the concepts here, because there's a lot of pieces moving here. One is this diet mentality, which generally means I look at food as something I need to restrict. It's something that I can, and so then it's almost like the more I think about not eating, the more I think about eating.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and I can't have that. I can't have that. So I'm in a denial mode of it. And after a while, my willpower breaks down. And then I say, oh, what the heck? And then, it's just one piece. And one piece becomes, the whole cake. a whole bag of cookies. I mean, and I lose all control. And then I feel shame, guilt, a lot of other emotions that make me feel bad about myself. And then I got to say, well, I got to start again. But this time I have to do it harder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in a cycle of failure. And
that's a great description, actually. Yes, absolutely. I would classify it as failure because what happens with that too is most women will only see that. The shame and the guilt cloud. And so for me, failure is that of someone who doesn't want to take their experience and learn from it and then try to adapt and or change. So if you're stuck in that cycle, yeah, I would have to say that it's failure, because if you don't have the willingness to dig deep, to kind of figure out what is truly going on, like your relationship with food, your body, who you are, then yeah, you may not overcome that. So like that's my job as a coach, is to kind of reevaluate what's really going on, but at the same time help you find yourself and know that like you're not broken.
Okay, so maybe now if you can give us maybe an example of how you reverse engineered. And again, part of it's the food part in terms of introducing different foods and different amounts of foods and different times. But it's also the mindset they have about the foods. So maybe you could talk about a little bit about an example where you're able to do that. And as you did that, you helped the individual find themselves and create a path out of the failure cycle and into one that helped them reach their goals and stay healthy.
For sure. So I had a client who was highly restrictive. So she had an, I mean, it's important to say this, that she did have a anorexic background. So she was diagnosed years ago with anorexia.
Okay.
And when she came to me, she'd been through her therapy and all that kind of stuff, but she still had the fixation on how she looked to a certain point. So a lot of body image dysmorphia. But through that entire process, she had a poor relationship with herself, food, and the scale. So we had to reverse engineer that. And it took us some time, but it came through like, okay, how do you even know what you're eating? So she would journal her food. And at one point we're like, okay, you're journaling it. So what's the next step that you would like to do? She's like, well, I would actually like to understand more of what I'm eating. You know, I don't have a clear picture of like what carbohydrates and fats and proteins are and how much I actually need, because I often talk to her about increasing her protein. So she started to macro track, and it was nothing like where there wasn't any rules. And that's what I like to emphasize with a lot of my clients. It's like the only rules you put in place are the ones you want, but it has to be a guideline, not a rule that can't be broken, because rules are meant to be broken. But I think we all need structure. So with this client, we created some structure. She started to macro track a little bit, and I gave her some targets to adhere to or get close to as much as she could. And through that entire process, though, she didn't recognize that she was still progressing, because I wanted to shift her out of like the mindset of good versus bad foods. So I asked her to stop labeling food and recognize the fact that all food is good. There's just always going to be a better choice. There's always room for processed food. There's always room for nutrient-dense foods. We just got to figure out what works best for her at the time. And so she started to develop a different thought process towards food, where she wasn't thinking about it so much as like with the diet mentality of not deserving. She just started to say, okay, you know what? I can have a cookie. I know this isn't going to ruin my progress. And so there was that. And then the big change came along when where she just kind of felt like progress was not happening because she focused solely for herself. Even with feedback, she was always focusing on the scale. So she'd weigh in for herself. She's like, you know, Coach Brandy, like nothing's changing. I'm the same weight. But yet I could see the change in her mindset because her feedback was coming back more positive. But on the days that she would weigh in, Phil, I tell you, I could hear it in her voice. She didn't feel happy. And I'm like, you know what? Can you do me one favor? I know this is a lot because you've probably been using this thing for the majority of your adult life, but I need you and your husband, because I had him on board as well, to decide to get rid of that scale. You can no longer weigh yourself, because that's, it had nothing to do with food. It had nothing to do with tracking. It was her relationship with the scale that was dictating and defining who she was as a person. And you know what? She got rid of it. And to this day, we're still working together, where every check-in is such it's an aha moment for her, because she's no longer allowing the scale to define her progress. So we've gone from her, weighing herself to now just measuring herself to making choices based on loosely tracking her intake, just so she has a guideline and accountability. But now she's making choices. And actually, she had said to me that she'd gone for a dinner with her husband and her kids, where she went to like Five Guys Burgers and Fries. So I don't know if you guys have that down in Chicago, but we do up here, and it's an amazing burger joint. She actually went there and said to her husband, I feel free. I'm having a burger with bacon and cheese, and I'm actually here presently enjoying it without thinking that it's going to ruin her progress or she can't have. Like, she never once told herself in that choice that she couldn't have it. And that's building the trust. So I ask my clients, similar to her, anyone, that if you're labeling food, you have to let go of the labels, because that's part of it. You can track your intake all you want, but if you tell yourself you can't have a piece of cake, then you're just going to want to have it even more. Or if you continuously tell yourself you're a bad person for making that choice. So I have a lot of people reverse the language, and I catch them in that. So if they could check in, for example, too, with other clients, if they say, well, yeah, I made a bad choice, like I went out for dinner instead of making it, at home, I'll say to them, like, it wasn't a bad choice. It's the choice you made. So what can we do the next time? Like, if you felt like it wasn't the best choice for you, what would you do the next time? And we kind of like go back, we learn, and then we apply. And, like for someone too, like for this client that was from an anorexic background, I had to reverse diet her as well. So what that meant is that she was still kind of under eating, and that under eating kept her from reaching her goals, because we, as we take calories away, we down regulate. So our metabolism slowed down a little bit. And so what I wanted to do, because I knew her background, I don't want her to be dieting. The anorexic brain is just that of control and that of diet. And so I need to reverse that. And so I just asked her to start, slowly eating more food. And the macros I gave her would always have a little bit of a higher value, but we didn't focus on it. I just wanted her to try and strive for that. And you know what? She did it, because she had to trust herself, and we had to get into a place of trusting the system. And I think she got that trust simply by the fact that she wasn't feeling deprived, and she was feeling like she was feeling free. And I think when people start to feel some sort of progress like that, that's the aha. That's the little stone that you need to move in order to get to the big boulder. And so, yeah, like, it's just kind of reversing the mindset of just like the language that we use, and even the approach. If someone is somebody who's chronically underfeeding themselves, I just like to introduce the idea of just eating a little bit more food and educating them on what value food has, like the thermic effects. So basically what, the end product of what eating food does for you. I think too often women come to us and they just are, like I said, they're under the chronic dieting mentality or fad diet. So they understand restriction. And so you've explained really well what a diet mentality is. And that's exactly what it is. They're just diet. That's what they think. But eating more food is scary. And so I have to teach that. And I have to educate women on what food does for our bodies. And if you do want to look and feel better and perform well, even at work, play, or whatever, you need to be eating enough calories. So that's kind of like it. Like, no one has the same, no one will have the same result. And I definitely don't apply this to every single client. It really does depend on each individual. But that's the difference between what a fad diet or I like to call them cookie cutter coaches do, is like they just give you this diet and send you on your way. Whereas I want you to dig deep, and I will help you apply all these different strategies that will get you a step closer to the outcome you desire.
I think one thing, Brandy, that you mentioned that's kind of very, very important is people have so much focus on the scale and getting on and that weight, and that validates them or invalidates them. And so if you move that away, if you take that out of the equation, that's like part of the issue, because they still have this, there's still a level they're looking for some kind of validation in that same process. And so what they need to be able to do is to replace the scale with something else that gives them that a similar kind of validation. And what you were talking about is that feeling of being free when they're eating a hamburger, of feeling better when they eat more calories, and start to trust that. So they start trusting those feelings and those changes as much as they used to feel about trusting the scale. And that's a slower process because it's little bit by little bit based on their language, both to themselves and when they talk to other people. But they still have to replace that validation process.
Yeah, and I think for some, because they get so caught up on the scale, they don't even recognize their own body cues. So they don't tell, or they won't admit that they're sleeping poorly, that they are hungry or they're not hungry. And so when you let go, and not everybody is tied to the scale like she was, or what some of your clients might be as well, but I do think that you do have to find some other source of validation, because we all like to see progress, right? But if we measure it solely on the scale, no one truly understands that that's body weight. And so to define that can be so many different things. If I said it was just body fat, sure, we could maybe just use that as as biofeedback, but it measures so many other things. It can measure your hormones that day, a big workout, sodium, glycogen, all those different things, body fat gain, weight loss, like there's so many things. And I do think that if you were to use progress pictures, journal your thoughts, because if you look back at your journals and you see that you're no longer talking to yourself in a negative, language or anything like that, that's progress. You can track your intake. You can measure your girth, all that kind of stuff. That is the feedback. And I often say to people, listen, how are your moods? If you're feeling better about yourself today, that is progress. Whereas before you might have just been really not happy. And if you can't find happy, then that's not good, because happiness will lead to success in how you feel and confidence. And I like to really have clients dig deep to that. Like, anxiety and depression, all that stuff can hold us back. But maybe what that is that feeling of guilt and shame that relates back to the scale, that then, relates back to the yo-yo diets where you're binging and then eating clean. And like, it's just this huge cycle. So getting the mindset right, I think, is one of the most important things that we can do when we are embarking on any transformation, whatever it might be, because the outcome goal is going to be different for every single person.
Brandy, once a woman gets started in programs, starts getting some success, what's the biggest obstacle they have to making it sustainable?
I do believe that I believe this in my heart, that mindset is huge. Like, if you don't change your view, and if you don't want to commit and I guess buy into it, you're going to hold yourself back, and it won't be sustainable. Because if you don't buy into the process, buy into the belief that you have the ability to succeed, then you're going to find a way to self-sabotage. Because there's a certain point in time where you're just like, you're feeling good, but then you're like, oh, I feel so good. But then, and you think you're deserving of something, and then that you're still not ready, because your mindset's still kind of maybe stuck in the diet mentality. Because as soon as you have that treat, then you step back and be like, oh, I shouldn't have had that. And I see that a lot. So for me, I think that it's important is that clients need to change their mindset, and they have to have the buy into the belief. And so the system, so whoever you're working with, or even if you're doing it on yourself, it's important to understand that what you're doing, the approach has to match your priorities and your values and your goals and who you are as a person. So for a lot of people, if they don't understand who they are in this moment and who they want to become, it won't be a sustainable approach, because they'll choose something that's really extreme because they don't understand who they are or what they want from it. They're just, like for some people, they just automatically say, I just want to lose weight. But what does that person look like losing weight? Who is she? And how far in advance is that? So really it comes down to, mindset, believing in the process. And, honestly, you need to have consistency. So whatever it is that you're doing, in order for it to be sustainable, you have to have consistency. And at the end of the day, the only way you're ever going to achieve your goal is if you adhere to whatever it is that you're doing. But recognize that there are going to be obstacles. And those obstacles, they could be overpowering. But if you understand and have a clear purpose, you can defeat any obstacle that comes your way. You just got to believe in yourself. And I know that there are women out there that have these self-limiting beliefs about themselves. They refuse to stand in their truths, and they'll blame other situations or create these excuses where all they need to do is be like, you know what? I do have a shitty relationship with food, and I want to fix it. I have to fix it. Or I am a chronic dieter. I don't have the confidence to do this on my own. I need to hire a coach. These are the things that these revelations and these, just like that digging deep, it has to happen. And that, to me, once they have all that established, that's the sustainability. That's forever, because you start to learn from all those choices and the mindset, and you recognize that your old ways were not getting you to the place you wanted to be. And I think for some, and I think this is the game changer, that they quickly realize that losing 10 pounds was not really what the goal was. And I'll give you an example. I have a client who I've worked with for over a year, and we've gone through a cycle of like, let's just get leaner. And that's what she wanted. But then when we started back together again, she's like, I want to do a photo shoot. But during this entire process, Phil, she's come to realize that she had somewhat of a underlying binge eating disorder, but not diagnosed. So we've worked through all that, but I wanted her to establish the why. Like, why are you doing this photo shoot? And, it took her a long time to start changing her mindset. But one day she checked in and she's like, I've got it, Coach B. And I'm like, what is it? She's like, the photo shoot is one thing, but I know what I want from this and I know what my purpose is. I've never felt confident in my skin. I've never felt confident to even put on a pair of jeans and walk with my shoulders set high, my head high. She's like, I always feel like I'm covering myself, even if she was the most fit person in the world. And she's like, I want to feel confident in my skin. That's all I want. I want to be able to put on some clothes. I want to put some makeup on. I just want to be out there and be seen. And I thought that was huge. And that has changed everything. So once she came up with that clear purpose, this sustainability is going to be there forever, because now she knows. So, you have to have that approach, and you really do have to dig deep. And I think that's what most women forget to do, because they just see on the surface rather than digging deep.
And that's really where the coaching comes in, because the coach is there to help you and give you the support and make it okay to look in areas that perhaps they wouldn't look on their own. Absolutely. Because there's plenty of programs out there. There's plenty of online programs and books on self-help that say change your mindset. But they don't affect change because they aren't dealing with the person in the here and now. And that's what coaching is. It's periodically you're in the moment with a coach talking about what's going on inside yourself and what you want to do. Now, Brandy, if there was one lesson that you could share with my listeners about taking a fitness journey, and that where they may have been either having the diet mindset or have their body in repair, what would be your biggest lesson learned that would help them no matter what they wanted to do from a fitness standpoint?
I think that most people are always just like, it's very simple. I think we're always looking for change right now. We just lack the patience. And so if there's one thing that I could say to anybody, it's just like, you have to give yourself time, because if you think about where you are right now in your life, how long did it take to get you here? Like, what choices have you made to this point? Obviously, it didn't happen overnight. So therefore, you have to be willing to do the work and take the time to reverse all of that. And I think that in a lot of cases, people just get caught up in the hype, the vibe, the next best thing, or the new fad. And you have to really understand that kind of scenario is what gets you further away from your goal. Chronic dieting will not fix it. There is not a meal plan out there that is going to help you reestablish your relationship with food. You have to be willing to do the work and take the time to do it. There is nothing that's going to fix your hormonal profile without you doing the work. And that includes eating, proper nutrition, understanding what you need to fuel your body. So, just actually being educated in the fuel systems themselves. And also just understanding exercise too, because as valuable as exercise is for people, it is a stressor, and we over-exercise to compensate for the poor choices we're making, where in fact, if you just took the time, you wouldn't be in that position. So, I've said to many people in life that, or about my life, that I don't have any regrets. But if I were to tell my old self something, it would be something along the lines, or my younger self, my younger version, is that I need to stop seeking validation and looking for that, and stop focusing on how I look, and rather take the time to understand who I was, as a person, and what I truly wanted. Because even when I look back in my 20s, it laid the foundation for where I was in my 30s. And there were a bunch of poor choices in there because I was so stuck on this look and this what I thought I needed. But, over time, it's just like you got to stop comparing yourself, and you got to stop doing a lot of things that involve a whole bunch of people, and start focusing on what you truly want from your life, and take the time to understand it. Because like I said, you're a byproduct of choices. And it didn't happen overnight. So you have to be willing to put that time in, and effort and patience to get to the next level, or to achieve what you truly want from your choices. And that's what's going to get you to living your best life, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's a very powerful message. And Brandy, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experience. If people want to learn more about you or to contact you, where should they go?
You can find me on Instagram at Motivate and Be Fit. And then my Facebook page is the same, Motivate and Be Fit. And then my website is motivateandbefit.com.
Well, that's great. So, Brandy, thank you so much again for sharing your insights and for helping our women out there live a longer, healthier, happier life.
Thank you, Phil. It's been great.
Take care.
You've been listening to Never Too Late for Fitness Radio, hosted by Phil Ferris. To learn more about the guests or resources on our show today, or to listen to past episodes, go to nevertoolateforfitness.com.